watching for that. Okay, so at this point, it looks like it is the 1:30 time zone, so we'll get started. Thank you very much again for being with us. This is my name is Sue Nelson. I am the program officer here at the Community Foundation. I do work with our grants and scholarship programs here at the foundation, and I'm very excited to give you some information about the grant process. With me today, I have Ann Worth. She's the chair of our distributions committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. Looking forward to spending an exciting hour of grant writing with you today. Thank you.
So we do have about an hour and a half budgeted of your time, but I think that we might be able to finish up in a little bit less than an hour. Just want to let you know that today's session is going to be very much like if any of you would come into our office to have a conversation with me about a particular project that you're looking for funding. In the email that you received yesterday, you did get these sheets on each of the grant programs that we have. Those will be helpful to you for some added information regarding each of our competitive grant programs, what the mission of each one of them is, what their deadlines are, things like that can all be found in these sheets that were attached with the email yesterday. In addition to that, you got a listing of local foundations. That's something that I usually share in a conversation when you come into the office. This afternoon, we do plan to follow this session by sending you the recording of this session, along with a couple more pieces of information that will be helpful you in the grants search process. One of them that we failed to include yesterday is this list. We do have the list of foundations that was attached, but this is a companion piece that I usually use when someone comes into the office. What this piece is it lists, again, those local foundations that serve Marathon County. It will give you your contact person, a little bit more information on what their grant guidelines are and what their application deadlines are. So this is kind of a helpful piece of information that we will get to you as well. We've been kind of working on this in the last couple of weeks to get this updated. There may be some changes coming out, but this is a really helpful tool as you're looking for funding, as well as this worksheet that will explain the funds within the community foundation that you can apply for. Again, what do we look for within each of those grant cycles? When can you apply? Who is the contact person to talk to? So these are two helpful pieces of information that will be coming to you as well today. From our outline today, what we will be doing is we'll be talking a little bit about the Community Foundation, the different funds that we administer, that you are able to apply for grants to help you with the work that you do, the important work, I should say, that you do within the community. We're going to help you pull some information together to have you ready to put in an application to us and kind of talk through the application process. And hopefully we'll have some time on the end for questions. Again, if you have any questions, send them through to the chat. Kelly will be looking to you to help us with that. Community Foundation, we remain here to enhance the quality of life in North Central Wisconsin. Although today, many of the grant programs that we talk about will be more focused on the region of Marathon County, not so much the broad area, but Marathon County specifically with most of the grant programs that we have. Just to introduce you to the team that is behind the work that we do here at the Community Foundation, our administrative team, 6 of us that are here in the office, actually all working from home right now, but here to help you through the grant making process, fund administration process, getting some checks written out to you, doing some marketing of the programs that we are able to fund for you. Tim, Pam, Carla, myself, Kelly, and Jenna, we're here to serve you. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We do like to share our board of directors. We're very proud of this group of people who work really hard. There isn't a grant that goes through without the approval of our board of directors. So they are here backing up the work that we do as well. So we thank them for that work. Just to give you a little bit of idea where the Community Foundation is these days. This are some of the numbers that you will see in our annual report for 2021. Currently managing 450 funds that total assets of, we're getting close to $90 million. We're at about $89 million right now in administered funds. This last year, we took in 7.2 million in donations for different purposes. And we're able to award grants last year of 6.5 million. So very proud that that number continues to grow a little bit each year. So very, very excited about that. The different types of funds that we do administer through the Community Foundation. The top two are probably the ones that are of most interest to you as a grant seeker. That would be our Community Enhancement Fund and our Field of Interest Fund. The final three, the Designated Fund, the Agency Fund, the Donor Advised Fund, and the Scholarship Funds, we work more specifically with the donor itself on the directive of where the grants for those funds go. Not so much a competitive process for nonprofits to come out and reach to us and ask us where for that type of funding. Community enhancement, that's our most powerful granting vehicle right now, and that's the one that you would be most likely going to apply for. That is making grants in the community, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Field of interest, also something, if you put in an application for community enhancement, you may end up with a grant from the Field of Interest Fund. Community enhancement, most likely the fund that you would get your grant from would be our Wausau Marathon County Fund. We solicit funds to build that community treasury up. And it has been growing year after year, continues to make larger and larger grants, more and more grants. But in addition to that, under the community enhancement portion of the funds that we administer, we have several individuals and families that have left money to us through their wills or other vehicles, and any donation of $250,000 for an unrestricted purpose will set up a community enhancement fund for us to be able to make grants out of. So you may get a grant from the Wausau Marathon County Fund. You may get a grant from the Jim and Susan Lundberg Fund. You may get a grant from the Nils and Jeannie Becker Fund. You may get a grant from the Ed and Lois, right? Ed and Lois Drott Fund. Any one of those funds, our committee will decide where those grants come from. The application you fill out is the Community Enhancement Fund. That's the first one that you would go to. So just to kind of show you by the numbers, just out of interest, not that it's anything that you need to be aware of, but as you can see, a large portion of the grants that we make are from our donor advised funds. That big portion of the pie, the big blue portion of the pie, are our donor advised grants. And we often are asked with community enhancement grants why we do not fund operations, because operations are very important to our foundation, to our nonprofit community. The reason is within the Community Foundation, we are actually funding operations, but that's generally happening out of the donor advised fund. So you will get grants through the Community Foundation from individuals who support your work. And that's where a lot of operations come from. Community enhancement generally does not do that. So that's just kind of an interesting graphic of where the grants from the foundation are made. So the donor advised fund, as I told you, is an important part of the community foundation and the work that we do. We have 140 different donor advised funds that were set up by individuals, corporations, former private foundations, or donors who have decided to form a fund within the community foundation rather than set up a private foundation. Donor advised fund is donor directed. They are the ones that make the recommendations from that fund where the grants are made. But the thing with a community foundation is that we do have relationships with many of those donors. We know what they like, what type of organizations are important to them. So if a need in the community comes up, if you have a conversation with me about a need and you're looking for some funding, you're debating on whether to put a proposal in, but maybe you need funding right away. I may have an opportunity to reach out to one of our donor advised funds and let's make a match for you that way to find some funding. So it's just one of those things that we're able to do as a community foundation that many other organizations are not able to do. An example of that was this last year. Wisconsin Judicare did come to us and they needed some funding for their mentor program. And it was kind of a quick need that they had. I reached out to several donor advised funds and who might have an interest in social justice and helping people that might be at risk, and finally did make a match with a donor who was able to fund that program in the amount of $2,500. So it wasn't a large grant, but we were able to connect that donor with the organization. We never promise anything. We just say that we'll make that information available to our donors. And as it says on the bottom, they direct where those grants are made. We just are the instrument that sometimes helps that happen. One of the donor advised funds that we work very closely with is the Emmerich Properties Fund. Many of you may have gotten grants from the Emmerich Properties Fund that was set up by Arden and his wife, and they are just looking to make some meaningful grants in the community. But this is one that we do not have an application through the community foundation. This one, they take personal contacts directly with Lynn Geyer, who is the fund advisor. So we have her contact information on the bottom of this slide. If you want to contact her, we've got the phone number and the email address. If you have something, even for operations, or maybe a $1,000 donation toward your work, if you want to have a conversation with them, this is one that I always put out there as a possibility of funding through the Emmerich Properties Fund. If you want to know more specifically about them, feel free to give me a call. I can talk that one through for you as well. So when I talk about grant writing, internally, we talk about grants that are made in an application process as being competitive grants. So this is what we have available in 2022 in competitive grants. We have about $840,000 available to invest back in the community this year with our competitive grants. That would be our community enhancement grants through those 10 different funds. And then we also have the private the foundations that have set up funds with us at about $200,000 that they will be making grants back in the community as well. So taking the time to put in some proposals through the community foundation is definitely worth your time because there is money available. The pots are being refilled in January, and we're ready to make some grants in the coming year. So if you are ready to start looking for some funding, am I getting a weird glare here? Try a little different angle. You're ready to do some grant seeking. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to those lists that I gave you. Local funders are probably your first source for looking for funding. Do some research, find out which ones might be a good fit for you. You have your project outlined and ready to go. Project details, especially a budget, have some idea what your budget might be for the project that you're looking for. A conversation with me is a good place to start as you do your fund seeking. And just give me a call, send me an email, and we'll get that conversation started. Another thing to do, always at the beginning of the year is a good time to do this, or right before you put in your first proposal of the year, update your document files. And if we have the next slide, kind of give you an idea of the type of things that you might need in your, just kind of put these all in the same place in your computer so you're ready to put your proposals in. And I have to say, I'm better at saying to do this than to do it myself, because I do put a couple applications in and I'm always looking for documents here and there. So if you have a file on your computer, this is really helpful. Your IRS determination letter. Not something that you'll need when you apply through the Community Foundation, because you're going to provide us with your EIN. Once we get your EIN, I do some background checks on everyone that does put in an application. Make sure that you are still a viable organization, that the IRS still sees you as a acceptable potential grant recipient. So, but an IRS determination letter might be something you'd want to keep in that file. Once you have it in there, it's not going to change. It'll be there for you. Your financial statement, always make sure you have your most current financial statement available, ready to put in your proposal. Most foundations will ask for that information. Your mission statement is something most foundations will ask for as well. A current list of your board of directors. This is the one that I usually always have to scramble at the last minute with my staff here. Let's get this list pulled together. A current list of your board of directors. Keep that in your file. Organizational structure, and your non-discrimination policy is something that we would ask that you have available as well. So when you're ready to start having conversations in the community to find your funding, I have to say that I am usually a good source to start with. We'll have some conversation. We'll talk about some of the other foundations that might be able to help you, as well as what is available through the Community Foundation. So we say it oftentimes that have that conversation with us. You'll probably gain a lot of information through that conversation. And that can either happen by email or by phone, or come to see me in person. Any one of those ways to meet works well. So your initial conversation, what I need from you is who you are and what agency you represent, an overview of your project. So just want to have an idea that you have a good idea what you are looking for funding for. That would include your timeline. Is this something that you hope to complete by the end of the year? Is it something you plan to complete in the next couple of years? A timeline is very helpful. And what kind of funds are needed? Is this a $100,000 project? Is this a $10,000 project? Is this a $50,000 project? Is this a $2 million project, or a 13? How much was the latest one? $20 million project? A $20 million project? Just how much is the project and what is the current status? Have you met with other foundations? Have you received any funding so far? How much are you still needing to complete the project? So that's what I need from you. And with that conversation, what you're going to get from me, I'm going to talk about within the Community Foundation, which applications I would encourage you to apply for. I will give you a range of how much you can ask based on the capacity of each of those funding sources. You're going to find out our deadlines. You have those on those sheets that we already gave you. Most of our deadlines are in the fall now. However, the community enhancement grant, you still have the 4 times a year in March, June, September, and December. So you have your deadlines to get your applications in. And I'll talk a little bit about the proposal. So we'll talk about each funding source, and I'll talk a little bit about each of the committees that I work with and what over time I have seen as being important for them. So that's part of the conversation that we'll have. And then the other thing that I will provide for you is that source of other local foundations. May also point to the Wisconsin Directory Foundation list. Excuse me, just to give you an idea where you might find some additional funding. The one thing that we often say is we do provide the information on other foundations. We do not speak for them. We do not say, go to the BA and Esther Greenhack Foundation, ask for $20,000. We don't say things like that. We would ask that you have those conversations individually with each foundation that you meet. But I can give you a little bit more information within the community foundation. So I just kind of want to run through real quickly the different grant processes that we have through the community foundation. And again, most of these have moved to a September 1 deadline. So hopefully we're not looking for funding real quickly within the next couple of months for your projects. In many cases, you might be looking at projects for 2023 with this particular funding deadline that we're offering with most of the foundations. But Ed and Joyce Kresge were the owners of Wasatile. Their family still manages that corporation, as well as Imperial Industrial, which have their homes toward the Mosinee area. They themselves grew up and were residents of Mosinee, so their interest is very heavy in the Mosinee area, although they also make grants throughout central Wisconsin in Portage County, Marathon County, Lincoln County, kind of where their employees are is where they want to invest their money back into the community. You'll see the 1st of September is the application deadline. Their grants have generally, and I'm just going historically, have run between $1,000 and $5,000. So specific questions on that, you might direct me. I might direct it to the family to get an answer as well if I'm not able to answer your question. So then Mid-Wisconsin Legacy Foundation came to us when Mid-Wisconsin was merged or taken over by Nicolay Bank, and Mid-Wisconsin no longer existed. It was a bank that started in the Medford area, grew throughout central Wisconsin and northern Wisconsin. They continue to make grants in the communities where Mid-Wisconsin had a presence when they were here, and that would be Medford, Abbotsford, Wausau, Minocqua, Rhinelander. The guidelines outline that a little closer. They look at applications to come in by October 15. They generally make grants in the $1,000 range, but are looking for things to invest in throughout central Wisconsin. So it's a nice place to pick up maybe $1,000 towards your project, or maybe even something that would fund your project totally. So that's a good one to keep in mind as well. Merco Foundation was a foundation that was birthed out of what am I thinking? What's the company?
Murray Machinery.
Murray Machinery. Thank you. Murray Machinery. And the foundation continues to do work on their behalf. Their focus areas are in the areas of arts and education. They meet also in the fall with a deadline of September 1. Grants generally range in the area of $1,000 to $5,000. Occasionally, they may make a grant a little bit higher than that for a specific project. Again, arts and education. They generally do most of their work in the background. And I'm not real involved in the selection process or attend their meetings. So I usually just get a directive from them after they've had a chance to meet, but the application is on our online application process. If you have specific questions about your project and whether or not it is fundable, Dave Gisselman or Stu Etten are good sources for that. If you feel like you want to start through me, I'd be more than happy to direct your questions to them and we'll get that taken care of for you. But Merkel Foundation, very generous in the community. As well as Clyde Schleter. Clyde Schleter was an executive with WASA Insurance, and his current board includes people that worked with him through WASA Insurance. Fine group of gentlemen who meet once a year to make grants. This is a change from last year. Last year they didn't meet in the summer and the fall. They are now looking at grants once a year. They'll be looking at them in September, and their grant range does fall anywhere between $1,000 and $10,000. So another place that might be able to help you out, especially if you are in the greater Wausau area and are doing any kind of project or program that will be focused toward youth. They like that, or civic improvement. So those are some areas that are real important to them. So good group of people that we work with. Wausau and Marathon County Parks and Recreation Foundation has been around for a long time. We have had the fund within the community foundation for quite some time, but this year or late last year, we finally worked with them to put this application on our online application site as well. So this is one of the applications that you would find on our site and would be able to fill out an application if you have something that would improve the recreational opportunities in Wausau and Marathon County. They meet every other month. As you can see, the application deadlines are the first day of the months listed there, starting in February, April, June, August, October, and December. They look at those applications because it's online. They have them in the hands of the committee quite quickly. They look at them during that month. You will have your answer by the end of the month, whether or not your project has been funded. Again, $5,000 is a typical grant from the Wausau and Marathon County Parks and Recreation Foundation. If you have any specific questions, actually Jamie Polly with the Park Department would be a good place to start to ask questions. We're just starting our relationship with them, and she may be able to answer your questions a little more fully than I can right now on the type of things that they do fund. Beyond Pencils and Crayons, I'll just touch on that, is a program of the Community Foundation that makes grants specifically for teachers in Marathon County. The teacher is the one that does need to put in the proposal. We make grants that make learning in the classroom fun, exciting. We try to fill some holes that might not be filled with normal school budgets. And we look at those applications in the fall with a deadline of September 30th. The funding must be used within that particular school year, and grants we have been awarding anywhere between $250 and $5,000. So this one, if you know any teachers that have some creative ideas, please let them know. Beyond Pencils and Crayons is one of those grant programs always available to them. And now I'm going to sit back for a little while, and I'm going to look to Anne to talk about our community arts and our community enhancement grants.
Oh, we got the sunshine coming through. It's exciting to see some sun outside. First up, I'd like to talk about our community arts grants. And our community arts grants are specific to art projects or programs that have a public component within North Central Wisconsin. Applications are scored and based on quality, artistic merit, uniqueness, and community needs and the impact that it creates in the community. Funds are provided for this program from the B.A. and Esther Greenhack Foundation, the Wisconsin Arts Board, and from the Community Foundation. And the applications are through the Community Foundation. And again, as mentioned previously, contact Sue regarding your project. The deadline for these grants is April 15th, and the panel meets on May 12th, and funds are available by July 1st. And requests are accepted up to $5,000. And very important key component is no more than 50% of the total project should be requested. And then final reports submitted within 2 years after the funding. I want to bring up, Sue's talked to you about some other things, and she'll be going on some more. But the community arts grant differs from some of the other grant processes as the fact that they is open to the people, it's open to the public, and it's open to all of you. If you are applicants, you're not allowed to speak, but it is an interesting process that the committee goes through, and I would highly recommend, if you have an opportunity to sit through that. They're very thorough, and one of the things that the group looks at basically is making sure that all of your budget numbers match up all the way through the applications. The main one that we talked about earlier, and that it meets 4 times a year, is the community enhancement grants. And the fun purpose of that, it is the foundation's most flexible resource, and it impacts the needs of the community as they arise. And grants focus within the greater Wausau area and the arts, education, health, human services, and resources and preservation. Again, applying through the Community Foundation, and contact Sue ahead of time before you make your grant application. And the deadlines are the first business day of March, June, September, and December. And those grants are available from anywhere from $1,000 to $100,000. And I know that Sue had mentioned earlier that one of our last grant requests was for, 20 million. So that higher number is basically so that it can address some of these bigger requests that are out there in the community. The funding priorities are arts and education, health, resource preservation, and social services. So it gives you a wide variety of different areas that you can look into. Community enhancement grants. We generally fund nonprofits and 501c3s, Greater Wausau area, Marathon County. And the next word's very important, tangible. Committee looks at that word a lot to see if the project is tangible, and is it long-term? Is it a new program? Does it really have a creative aspect to it? Equipment and capital improvements are also some of the things that are funded.
So I have to ask a question, Ian, because this is something that someone may come to us. Would you provide funding for scholarships for students to be able to participate in a, let's say, a theater program or a sporting program that's in the community? Would scholarships be something that you would fund?
No, those are not. Again, it goes back to that word tangible. So when you're writing your application, think about that word, and is what you're asking for tangible? Is it, again, long-term? And does it really add and enhance the community? So those are some of the questions to ask as you go through that.
So another example, would you fund a food pantry to fill the pantry with food that will be feeding people for the next several weeks?
There'd be a discussion on it, but what would come out of that is, would we not rather pay for the refrigeration? Would we not rather pay for the shelving that the food would be on? Would we, one of the things that was funded with the neighbor's place was wagons. So that people couldn't take the heavy bags, and they noticed that they couldn't take the heavy bags. So they wrote an application for wagons, and you'll notice those wagons because they've got the Community Foundation logo on those wagons when you see those wheeling down the street. We do not generally support annual appeals, operating expenses or losses, debt retirement, endowments, direct support of individuals, lobbying, or sectarian causes. Submitting an application, register on the online application site, and the Community Foundation staff has worked very long and hard to make this a very easy process with the application online. And make sure you choose the appropriate application, because as we've gone through, there are a number of different grants that are available through the Community Foundation. And make sure it's complete, and most importantly, submit it on time so that you will be included in the grants. Writing a good proposal. As some things just never change throughout the years, and that's 4 C's of grant writing. Be clear, be concise, be convincing, and be collaborative. Very important. And as you go back through and reread it, make sure that you have absolutely met all 4 of those when you're looking at writing your application. Writing a good proposal. Read and follow the directions. It'll be amazing how many times people do not read the directions and aren't considered for funding because of that very reason. Please write it in plain English. Don't use jargon, and be careful of your acronyms. And if you have an acronym, please spell it out so that the committee knows exactly what you're talking about. And provide clear and accurate information, and a balanced budget is a must. I can't tell you how many times that grants come in and the budget sheet does not match with the narratives, with the numbers that they're asking for. So make sure that you have all of your numbers matching completely throughout the whole entire grant application. Writing a good proposal. Be honest about it. You have on the committee people from various walks in the community. Some may know a lot about your organization, some may not know anything about your organization. Be honest with your proposals. Be consistent. Keep it simple and find a way to stand out. Be creative. Think about how you problem solve, and the committee really looks at when there are creative ways of solving problems and doing things in that can enhance our community. Have one outside of your organization read your application and get your request in on time, which is major. When you have somebody look at that application, make sure they're meeting all 4 of those C's, as we talked a little bit about earlier. One point that I'd like to make is that a lot of times when you're doing a major project, you're going to be applying for a number of different grants. When you go through your grant application and you've done some copying and pasting, please make sure that when you're asking the Community Foundation for funding, that it doesn't say, I'm applying to Foundation X, Y, and Z for funding. It's one of those slight mistakes that can cost you with your grant application. So very important to make sure when you're doing that cut and paste on different applications that you make sure that you are consistent with the one that you're applying for. And with that, Sue, turning it back to you.
I may actually ask you a couple questions because just kind of walking through the timeline of someone putting in a proposal. We have a March 1 deadline coming up, and applications reach our office by March 1, and they are opened to the committee for review. They have them in their hands already by March 2 and are starting to do their work. Can you maybe walk through a little bit about what goes through the mind of the review committee as they're reading the proposals? And maybe let's talk a little bit about what happens when we're in this room and we're reviewing the applications. Let's just take the stigma of the review process away from a potential applicant.
Well, when they reach the community foundation staff, they don't sit there and wait for a month. The first thing that happens is staff reviews them. The whole entire package is made available for us online as a committee to review and to score. So during that time period, each committee member is expected to read each application thoroughly and to score each application. If any questions come up on those applications, we have a process in place where if I have a question, I will get a hold of Sue. So you're not the only one that has to talk to Sue. I'll call Sue and I'll say, Sue, I've got 3 or 4 questions.
Not only am one lucky enough to talk to Sue.
Yes. And as well, there are other members of the committee that may be making that same phone call and asking questions. All the questions are routed through Sue. So you as an agency person do not have to answer questions from a number of different people, which might even be the same questions. Sue will take all of those questions. She will contact you as the agency and have you clarify what those questions. You'll have an opportunity to answer those. And then Sue will take all of those and she will email each and every one of us on the committee and the question and the response answer that came from your agency for it. So again, a lot of them go through without any questions, but there are a lot of them that do have certain questions because it hasn't been answered in the application. So remember your 4 C's. And then what happens is we meet and we beforehand, everyone scores all of their applications. And there are, just as you have to answer certain questions, we have to also answer certain questions regarding each application. Those scores are sent out to all of us ahead of time. And a very interesting thing happens a lot of times. These applications are discussed on their merits. And sometimes somebody may have scored one very high and may, after having discussion, bring their score down. Some people may have scored something on a lower end and decide that they are 100% behind it after the discussions that are held on each one. Excuse me. Every application is discussed very thoroughly. And after that, we discuss the funding. And one of the important factors that we've mentioned throughout this entire presentation is the value of talking with Sue Nelson ahead of time is that she will be in these meetings And what happens is if we have any other questions, she is usually able to answer them regarding the application. Nothing like having your water go down the wrong pipe here.
Sorry about that.
So I'm very sorry. So that's what takes place in between when your application comes and hits the community foundation. And after they are all put together, as Sue mentioned, they will be passed on to the next board meeting and go to the board of directors for approval. And they will receive a copy of all of the grants and a little paragraph about each one of them and what the committee recommended. Thank you.
And I have to applaud this committee because they work really hard at vetting the applications that are in front of them, and really do work very hard at pulling the grants that meet the mission of the community foundation in making this an enhanced community, and investing our money back in the community very well. The process goes relatively quickly. As I said, application deadline is the first business day of March, June, September, and December. And we look at those applications in the middle of the month. By the end of the month, you do have word from us whether or not your proposal has been successful. If you are successful, you receive a congratulatory email, which will direct you to go back to the system and complete the grant agreement letter. And we do make those payments for the grants when you are ready to move forward with your project or your program. In many cases, that's very quick. And some cases, it might be a month or two after you received your award. You do your project, keep things moving. Good grant making on our part is good fundraising. We love to let the community know what we have funded. So we do provide you with our logo to include in any kind of acknowledgement of your grant. Please do that wherever it is appropriate, whether that's social media, whether that is your newsletter, whether that is talked about in the paper, whatever it might be. Make sure that you're attached the community foundation to the good work that you're doing. We love that. We also have a banner that we would love to have displayed at your organization, maybe at a special event to acknowledge the grant, or just a time when you may have a lot of people running through your offices at a particular time. We love to have that banner there for people to see that we're a partner in the work that you do. Jenna Wykes from our office is the one that you would want to work with at getting that banner, getting that logo, and she'll set you up with that. We also love to be invited to site visits, ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings. We love to be a part of that and celebrate the work that you're doing. Other than that, we ask that you complete your project on time. Generally, we give grant applicants about 2 years to complete their program. Usually they're done much quicker than that. We keep a good timeline within our system here and ask you to do a final report once your application is complete. The one thing that I did want to mention about our grant application, this year we worked with the BA and Esther Greenheck Foundation. They also use the same online system that we do. And so what you will see after our staff and their staff work together, you will see that our applications are almost identical in the questions that we are asking, and that follows all the way through from the application to the grant agreement to the final report. We have tried to make it as easy as possible for grant recipients to spend as little time on reporting, which is necessary, but we want you to be able to have the time to do your good work. Kelly, do we have any questions in the Q&A? Otherwise, we could bring you back up. If you would like to unmute yourself, you could throw questions at Ann or I at this point, if you'd like.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anybody has asked any questions in the chat. So yeah, if people wanted to ask them now, that would be great.
Ask Kelly your question.
And I actually do want to introduce Kelly. Kelly is one of the newer members of our team here at the Community Foundation. As you may know, she was the executive director with the Center for Visual Arts. So now she is on the other side of the grant making equation. Kelly, what are some of your thoughts when it comes to the grant making process through the foundation?
Yeah, I guess now being able to see it from both sides, I really wish that I would have used, I guess, my resources more when I was an executive director. So, being willing to call Sue and ask Sue questions, really dig into what particular organizations we're looking for. For example, Mid-Wisconsin, I've seen grants that have come through that I was like, oh, shoot, I had a similar project, or oh, I could have partnered with that group and we could have, done a project together. And if I had just called Sue and been willing to ask those questions, there could have been more opportunity for my organization. So yeah, I think really utilizing Sue. Also, I know that she's volunteered that, a month before applications are due, that if you have yours completed, you can send it along. And that's a month at a minimum, I should say. But send it along to Sue so that she could just look it over and give some pointers and use her wealth of knowledge. I mean, Sue has, 30 plus years of doing this under her belt. And just understanding that she's friendly, she's approachable, and that there's really no dumb questions, no matter how long you've been doing this. I had been doing grant writing for 10 years and still wish that I would have asked some of those questions. So, yeah, I guess that's a little bit of my learned experience since now coming over to the other side.
Thank you. Kelly and I are working very closely in the grant making here at the Community Foundation, and I looked forward to increasing that work that we're doing together as she's learning this side of the grant making process. She's been a joy to work with. Thank you for being on the team here, Kelly. That's very exciting. The one comment that I like to make when it does come to any foundation, whether it's the Community Foundation or the BA and Esther Greenheck Foundation, the Dudley Foundation, the Davis Foundation, whichever one it is, our job is to give away money. We really are here to make the community a better place. You are doing the work that's necessary in the community. You're really the ones that are feet to the ground and getting work done. We're here to support that. Our job is to make grants. We're here to make good grants. We have good people looking at the applications that come in. We just want to provide the strongest proposal possible for that review committee to look at. So yes, use us in any way to help make that possible for you. And Kelly, thank you for staying a month in advance. We usually have a hard time helping you improve a proposal 24 hours ahead of time. We're at the process right now where 24 hours ahead of time, I'm probably opening applications that have come in already to the committee to look at. So about a month ahead of time. Early February would be a good time to get those questions in to me for the March application deadline. Again, if there are no other questions, we are always here to answer your questions. You've got contact information for myself, for Kelly, for Jenna, who's with us as well, our marketing director. Thank you very much for putting this whole thing together, Jenna. Thank you very much. We have a couple other attachments that we would like to get to you this afternoon. Jenna will be following up this session by sending you a copy of the recording of the session, as well as the handouts that I had talked about earlier with the listing of foundations serving our community. So watch for that from us. If you have any questions, just shoot them back to us. We will take care of it. Otherwise, we've got a couple other exciting things coming up for our nonprofits this year with Nonprofit Exchange. We've got a nonprofit exchange coming up in February. in February. We have our grant deadline in March. We'll have some lunch and learns. Hopefully we'll be able to get back in person and have some of our sessions so that we're able to collaborate and do some networking and be together in the next couple of months. Thank you again for being with us virtually today. And again, thank you for all the work that you do within the community. I want to thank Anne for being with us again today. She
Thank you
does such
very
a great
much,
job
Sue.
leading our distributions committee. If we don't have any other questions, which feel free to send those to me by email, we're going to give you back another half an hour of your life. I know we had this scheduled until 3 o'clock, but I think we could probably cut this off at this point. Thank you for being with us. Okay.